What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be talking about the Battlefield 2042 beta, and I just wanted to share my initial early impressions of the beta now that we've had a full day to play it. And keep in mind, I've been playing this on PS5, I do plan on checking this out on PC as well at some point, but so far I've just been playing on PS5. And let's start it off with the things that I like so far in the beta, and then we'll get more into the feedback and constructive criticism. And I just wanted to say right up front, in my opinion, this is the best feeling Battlefield game that I've played on controller. When it comes to the character movement and the weapon handling and everything, at least once I took the time to really dial in my settings, this feels great. And my first initial thought with this is it really felt to me like they were pushing that movement and character handling a little bit more in the direction of Call of Duty. It's almost like they made it to appeal to players like me, Call of Duty players that have always just felt like Battlefield wasn't quite there when it comes to handling on a controller. I'm not trying to turn this into a COD versus Battlefield argument, but something that I've always liked about Call of Duty is, in my opinion, it is the best feeling FPS game using a controller. And with this beta so far, I'm very impressed with how that handling feels. Now, I'm not too sure how the veteran Battlefield fans feel about this. I could understand some pushback against that, but it seems pretty clear to me that they're trying to appeal to a wider audience and try to attract some COD players, and in my opinion, they're doing a good job with this so far. I will say it did take a long time for me to dial those settings just right, and if you guys are interested, I may make a quick video today as well, letting you know which settings I went with to make it feel as good as possible and as close to COD as I could get it to feel. But yeah, overall, handling and movement, which is a huge part of the game, to me, felt great on a controller, keeping in mind I haven't played this on mouse and keyboard yet. Going off of that, the gunplay feels pretty good. I was surprised to see that there is very little recoil though. I was expecting more recoil out of this. But who knows, maybe we just have access to the more accurate guns that will be in the full build of the game. In either case, it is really easy to control that. Headshots are super satisfying because it seems like they deal a lot of extra damage. Like, headshots absolutely win gunfights in this. And I did find the kills to be very satisfying as well. A lot of that has to do with the feedback on getting a kill, so the nice big red hit marker that pops up and then the skull that you get that appears. I really like that. Every time I get a kill, at least against a real player and not AI, it feels very satisfying. Next up, in my experience at least on PS5, the game so far is looking and in general performing really well on PS5. The graphics are beautiful. I love the nice colorful map. I like the fact that the weather can change partway through, but it doesn't always do that. So the environment itself just feels great. And even though I have experienced a few visual bugs and a few issues here or there, so far it has been few and far between for me at least. I realize some people are having some serious issues with this. I've had some people tweet me clips and images from their PS5 and they're having big graphics issues. For me, in my experience so far, it looks and plays great on a PS5. Next up, something I noticed that I really like about these maps is the zip lines to traverse and also to get up to high ground really quickly. This is just great for speeding up the pace of the gameplay a little bit and providing you that extra option instead of just running upstairs for 2 minutes at a time just to get to the top of a building. The zip lines are working great. I also like the fact that you can call vehicles in, at least the transport vehicles. I'm still a little bit unsure about how I feel about being able to call in a tank wherever you want or anything like that. But when it comes to being caught out in the middle of nowhere, maybe you select a bad spawn point or something and there's no vehicles around, it's really nice to be able to just call in a transport vehicle, it'll drop to the ground, and then you can just hop in and get to where you need to be. On top of this, something that I personally really enjoy, and again, this is going to be an area where the veteran Battlefield fans probably are pushing back against this, but this particular decision was designed to attract people like me, and I personally like it. This is the fact that you can mix and match things. We don't have those like set strict classes. So if you want a health pack, you don't have to play as a medic and then you're just limited to the medic weapons and everything like that. That's something that has always put me off on playing Battlefield as much as I would like. Sometimes I want to mix and match my playstyle a little bit. Maybe I want to use a marksman rifle, but also still have a healing pack and also having the ability to deal with enemy tanks by having a rocket launcher handy. Maybe I want to use a marksman rifle, but I also want the ability to quickly heal myself with that Surette pistol. But then on top of that, I want to have a rocket launcher handy so I can deal with a tank if a tank comes nearby. I love the fact that I can finally mix all of those things into one character, rather than just selecting one and having a very limited playstyle for myself. Now with this, I do think they're really going to have to stay on top of balance far more than ever before, because I do feel like people will find that sort of ideal setup for all situations, and then everybody's going to start using the exact same thing. But as long as they can maintain balance with this, I really like the fact that there's far more variety and you can start mixing and matching things. And so far, those are the main things that stood out to me as things that I enjoy and that will definitely bring me back for more so than ever before in Battlefield. I've always dabbled with every single Battlefield game that's come out. I've at least played it for a bit, dabbled with it, and at least got a basic feel for things. But I've never really wanted to stick around much, and I feel like this game has the largest chance of keeping me around and keeping me coming back long term. And with that, now let's get into the issues that I've had so far, or just some feedback that I have, maybe some things that I dislike or I feel like could be tweaked a little bit. And the first big issue I had, and this could be just early access beta things, but initially I had a really hard time finding a match that had more real players than AI players. In fact, there was actually one match that I got where I was literally the only real player in that game. Every single other player in that match was a bot. And to me, that's just not very satisfying at all. I don't get any satisfaction from killing an AI bot. I think it's a neat idea for them to fill some extra slots on a server with that AI just to keep up the engagement pace and everything. But I do feel like there should be some sort of a cap on that or something, because it just wasn't fun playing a full match only against bots. Now, that was mainly early on, like in the morning yesterday. As the day progressed, I found I was running into more and more players to the point where I rarely saw AI. But at least at first, I just wanted to point out that that just wasn't very fun or satisfying playing against nothing but bots. Next up, and I think one of the biggest general issues I've been having so far with the beta is visibility. And this is going to break down into several different parts of visibility, because there are various aspects that are causing visibility issues. One big thing I noticed is when you're aiming down sight at a heads-up display element, so like an objective that's in the distance, or maybe a teammate that needs to be revived and they have that giant revive icon above them, there have already been many situations, many gunfights I've gotten myself into where it just happens to line up perfectly, where my enemy that I'm shooting at is lined up directly on top of where that HUD element is. And when I aim down sight and I'm aiming at that enemy, or trying to, that HUD element doesn't fade away or anything. It actually completely blocks my view and blocks my ability to see and shoot at my target. So I hope that's something they can work out. It seems like a fairly easy thing for them to work out. I feel like if you're aiming down sight directly at one of the objective markers, it should fade away. But on top of that, I also noticed visibility in bushes was really rough. Like, somebody could lay in a bush and I'd have no idea, even if I'm actively searching for him. Maybe I saw him lay down in some bushes, or like a grouping of bushes. I can run through those bushes looking all over the place. I can't find the guy. He's like invisible in there. And I get it, bushes are designed to be used as concealment. Maybe this is the Call of Duty player in me coming out. But I just feel like the visibility should be a little bit better, or maybe they should cut down on the bushes just a little bit more than they currently have. Maybe this is just an issue with this particular map. I don't know. But there's a lot of bushes on this map, and they are quite scary because you just can't see anyone when they're laying in them. Additionally, something I noticed is I just have a hard time seeing character models sometimes in general. They might not even be in a bush. They'll just be sitting on a ridge, for instance. It just seems like there's very little contrast or very little separation from the background when I'm looking at them. They just sort of blend into a hill or blend into a ridge. And it's not even just the ghillie-suited players. Like, I'd understand if they were the guy that has the ghillie suit on it, but even the other character models that don't have ghillie suits, especially when you start to get to a bit of a distance, it seems like they'll just blend directly into the terrain, when, at least in my opinion, they shouldn't be. When you look at their uniform and everything, it shouldn't blend them in as much as it currently does. Next up, when it comes to visibility issues, I have the exact same visibility issue that I had in Vanguard, and this is the fact that we don't have factions. And you can have a teammate that looks literally identical to an enemy player. So you might see a teammate and then you turn away from them, and 2 seconds later you look back in that direction and you see that exact same character. Of course, you're going to assume that was that teammate that you just saw, but it turns out that is an enemy that is using the exact same skin and the exact same character. This is made even worse when you have those heads-up display elements that seem to stack on top of character models. There's been a couple times where a teammate's name tag has appeared above an enemy player because that teammate is way off in the distance behind that enemy player. But since there's also no factions, there's no way of determining that that's an enemy player until you actually aim down sight at them and see the red name tag appear. And I have been killed by this a few times already, where I was 100% confident that that was a teammate that I was looking at because there was a blue name tag right above his head, and he appears to be on the same faction as me because there are no factions, and then I end up getting killed by that player. And that's just really frustrating and annoying to see. I don't know why games are going in this direction. It harms the gameplay experience. Even if it's just a little bit, it does harm the gameplay experience, and I don't like this at all. Now, one final visibility issue that I noticed that was a bit frustrating, and this might just be something with the PS5. This might be something you can configure on a PC, but you just can't on a PS5. I notice a lot of pop-ins. So as I'm running through some open terrain, for instance, I'll see something pop up suddenly, and it's sudden movement, so I think that's got to be an enemy character. But it turns out it was just a bush that suddenly rendered in out of nowhere. And it's just jarring when it's constantly happening as you're traversing the map. You're just constantly seeing a bush pop up to the left and then to the right, and then you're reacting to that thinking, oh, that's movement, I should shoot at that. And then you realize it was just a bush that suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Now, perhaps this is just an optimization thing, and it's just part of the beta, and they will have this resolved for launch, or maybe they can make some adjustments to this so they slowly fade in instead of instantly popping in, so it's not quite as jarring and sudden. But it was something that I found to be relatively frustrating as I was covering ground. Additionally, something I noticed with the map is in many of the ridges, it felt like there were some clipping issues. So what I mean by this is I have a clear line of sight on my enemy, but there's a ridge between my target and myself, and I'm aiming just above that ridge, but still clearing the ridge, or at least I should be clearing the ridge, and it turns out I'm shooting an invisible wall that extends a little bit beyond the height of that ridge. This is relatively minor, I've only run into it a couple times, but it is something that's a bit frustrating, and hopefully they can tighten that up a bit. Next up, just wanted to mention a few little bugs that I've experienced. First up, especially with the AK, when I swap attachments, a lot of the times the attachments will automatically switch to one that I didn't select, or every time I respawn, it will reset my attachments and I have to put them on every time I respawn again, which is a little bit annoying. I'm sure they're aware of that issue, but I wanted to point that out. Additionally, I have had a couple crashes so far on my PS5. In just like 4 or 5 hours of gameplay time, I have had 2 to 3 crashes already, which is quite a bit of crashing, but I will be fairly forgiving in this area because it is a beta. That's the type of thing I would expect to see in a beta. I just hope that this isn't going to be happening frequently when it comes to launch. Also, something on PS5 I've noticed is I can't seem to completely disable vibration within the game menus itself. I think I have to go into my PlayStation settings and turn vibration off there, because even though I have literally every single vibration setting turned off in the in-game menus, I'm still getting vibration in my controller. And I just feel like that's something you should be able to do in the in-game settings, and you shouldn't have to go to your console settings in order to adjust that. That's an extremely minor issue, but I did want to point it out. Next up, I hope they make some adjustments to players exiting vehicles. The animation for that, or not so much animation, but just the fact that they pop out in kind of weird places, that can be really jarring and unexpected when an enemy hops out of a vehicle and then they're suddenly just like teleport to some weird location that you don't expect them to. It just doesn't seem to be consistent, and it's really jarring to see that happen. It doesn't feel like it's in a final polished state, so I do hope they've made some adjustments to that for the final build of the game. But it is just one of those little things that doesn't feel right, and I hope they fix. Then when it comes to spawns, I didn't think this was going to be a complaint of mine, but it is. I totally understand in Battlefield if you select spawning on a squad mate, you're potentially going to spawn into danger. You're going to spawn into gunfire or an enemy looking at you. I get that. My issue is when I select a spawn point at a location that we are holding, oftentimes it seems to spawn you like right in the middle of that location with absolutely zero cover anywhere around you, and you've got enemy players looking directly at you as you spawn. This is a really large map we're looking at here. There've got to be better spawn points that you can select for players when they choose to spawn at a location that their team holds. And I've already had way too many situations where I've selected a spawn at one of my team's points, not a squad spawn, and I've spawned either directly into enemy gunfire, or I just spawned so far out in the open that there's no way I can make it to any form of cover before getting killed. So hopefully they can make some adjustments to that area as well. But finally, when it comes to the issues that I've noticed here, this is the footstep audio. I just feel like it's super inconsistent and really quiet, and especially in a large-scale experience like Battlefield, this doesn't really make much sense. This isn't a small scale thing like Call of Duty where you can't really avoid getting within a close proximity of your enemies, and you're constantly in close proximity, and therefore having extremely loud footsteps can be detrimental to the pacing of the game. When it comes to Battlefield, where you tend to be spread out a lot more, and if you are going to get within a close proximity to an enemy player, then that player should be able to hear you fairly clearly as you approach. I've run into several situations where enemies have sprinted right up on me, or me and an enemy will be like literally almost touching each other, and neither of us even knew that each other were there. I just feel like the footstep audio should be boosted a little bit, or at least made a bit more consistent, because sometimes I do hear footsteps just fine, and then in other situations I hear absolutely nothing when I really feel like I should. But with that, that's going to wrap it up for my very early initial impressions based on the Battlefield 2042 beta. I'm definitely enjoying myself with this so far. I'm really looking forward to this year of Battlefield, and like I said, I think this is the Battlefield game that's going to keep me around longer than ever before. But one big thing I also wanted to mention here is I'm just a bit disappointed with the fact that we have access to literally only one map and one mode in the beta. I wish we would at least have one extra mode that we can play just for a bit of variety, or another map ideally, but I understand why they're only going to do one map for the beta, it seems. But it would be nice to at least have one different style of game mode to play, just so that we could see a bit more variety and see how things would handle in different situations with different types of engagements and different types of approaches. It would be awesome to have Rush, for instance, even if it was on the same map. It would be great to have that just as an alternative experience. But at least at this point, we don't, and it doesn't seem like we will, but I hope they will surprise us with the addition of Rush or just something different for us to experience in the beta. Now, of course, these are all just my opinions, and they will be fleshed out more and more as time goes on. I'd like to know in the comments section below, what is your initial impression of the Battlefield 2042 beta so far based on what you've seen and or played? Are you generally excited for this game or not so much? Were you a bit disappointed in this? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.